Hello, everyone. I'm Terry Moran, and for almost 28 years, I was a reporter and anchor for ABC News. And as you may have heard, I'm not there anymore.
Do you think ABC should have fired Terry Moran over his Stephen Miller tweet?
Of course not. So stupid.
ABC News senior national correspondent Terry Moran was fired from the network earlier this week for a since deleted post that he made calling out Trump's deputy chief of staff, Stephen Miller. And Jake, people have some very strong thoughts on the situation. In the since deleted post, Moran wrote, "The thing about Stephen Miller is not that he is the brains behind Trumpism. He is one of the people who conceptualizes the impulses of the Trumpist movement and translates them into policy. But that's not what's interesting about Miller. It's not brains, it's bile. Miller is a man who is richly endowed with the capacity for hatred. He's a world-class hater." You can see this just by looking at him, because you can see that his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate. Trump is a world-class hater, but his hatred is only a means to an end, and that end is his own glorification. That's his spiritual nourishment. Moran was originally just suspended for the post, but later he was given the official boot 2 days later. So Cenk, is this a fireable offense, especially for a reporter? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so at all. I'm curious what Michael thinks. I don't know if we're going to agree or disagree here. I agree with Jon Stewart completely. So the idea here is that reporters are supposed to be neutral, and I don't agree with that idea. I think that reporters are supposed to be objective. Those are two different things. So neutral is, well, Stephen Miller could be full of hate or he could be full of love, but he's not. It's not, the truth is not in the middle. He's not full of love at all. He is full of hate. And so do you guys remember when MAGA was super mad at reporters criticizing Joe Biden or other Democrats? Because I don't remember that. But now all of a sudden, when beloved Trump is criticized, how dare you? So I see a lot of irony and hypocrisy here. But I am curious, Michael, what your take on it is.
Well, I mean, it's their own networks. It's not about MAGA being upset about it. It's about, ABC being upset because a reporter would have criticized Biden and you didn't see that. I don't think it's fireable, but I definitely, and I lean more towards a responsibility. If you have Terry Moran's beat and you're covering the White House and you're covering Congress and you're covering politics and you have for a long time, I do think that you have to hew toward objectivity as much as you can. I don't think that there's any, like I wouldn't give reporters the ability to tweet their personal feelings about things, but to share their stories and share their reports is one thing. So I would understand a network saying we just can't do that because we're going to show a little bit too much about that. I also would have reassigned Terry Moran in the worst case, right? I would have said, okay, you're going to now tell different stories. You're not going to be posted to the White House. You're not. So I do think that there's some, that there's a little violation from Terry Moran, but he's also got a long career of being an objective reporter at a network that has made some very questionable decisions lately that I disagree with wholeheartedly. So I would always take the side of Moran there. So I don't think he should have been fired, but I do see reason to get upset with him if you're his boss and to maybe pull him off a beat and put him someplace else. But firing him is silly, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, let's get to some details on this story. So according to Maria Bartiromo on Fox News, this was all spurred by a post that Miller made about the details about the big, beautiful bill. It's unclear if that's actually what happened, as Miller, he was also mass posting about the LA protests at the same time. But on Tuesday, ABC News stated that it was at the end of Moran's contract, which was originally set to expire today. And so they just decided not to renew it. They also said that the decision was based on Moran's post being in violation, like what Michael said, of ABC News policies. So in their original statement regarding his suspension, they told CNN's Brian Stelter, ABC News stands for objectivity and impartiality in its news coverage and does not condone subjective personal attacks on others. The post does not reflect the views of ABC News and violated our standards. As a result, Terry Moran has been suspended pending further evaluation. And again, of course, later he was fired. And as we stated earlier, many people had thoughts about this whole situation. So here is Vice President J.D. Vance. This is what he posted on X. He said, ABC journalist Terry Moran posted this absolutely vile smear of Stephen Miller. It's dripping with hatred. Remember that every time you watch ABC's coverage of the Trump administration, as it happens, I know Trump well. He's motivated by a love of our country. He's motivated by a fear that people like Terry Moran make rules that normal Americans have to follow, but well-connected people don't. It's why I can't even read this without laughing. It's why he fought so hard to get President Trump elected and why he works so hard to implement the agenda. ABC should apologize to Stephen. What Terry posted is disgraceful. Okay, well, meanwhile, the White House press secretary made it clear that they are seeking repercussions.
I saw your tweet about it, and you say last night in a since deleted post, so-called journalist Terry Moran went on a rampage against Stephen Miller. What happened, Caroline?
Well, ABC is going to have to answer for what their, again, so-called journalist put out on Twitter in the wee hours of the night, calling Stephen Miller vile. They said that President Trump is a world-class hater. And this is, again, coming from someone who is supposed to be an unbiased and professional journalist. This is unacceptable and unhinged rhetoric coming from someone who works at a major television network. We have reached out to ABC. They have said they will be taking action. So we will see what they do. But I think this speaks to the distrust that the American public have in the legacy media.
They're really milking this one. All right, so Stephen Miller himself also responded. He posted this. He said, the most important fact about Terry's full public meltdown is what it shows about the corporate press in America. For decades, the privileged anchors and reporters narrating and gatekeeping our society have been radicals adopting a journalist pose. Terry pulled off his mask. All right. However, some people thought it was more or less ABC News tucking its own tail. So on yesterday's episode of his podcast, Jon Stewart slammed the network for its decision to fire Moran.
John,
Yes.
do you think ABC should have fired Terry Moran over his Stephen Miller tweet?
Of course not. So stupid. No, for God's sakes. Should they have fired him? They shouldn't have paid the $15 million. They shouldn't have fired him. They're literally every day on Fox News, they're taking stuff out of context, or their people are saying utterly vicious things about Democratic politicians and all kinds of other things. The entire thing is because ABC clings to this facade that they somehow exist in a bubble outside of all of this. It's a joke. They're a joke. And the problem with it all is there's no level of fealty that is enough. You've seen him attack Fox News that is literally like a 24-hour Trump ball polishing machine. And so the idea that somehow there is a level of fealty that these journalists, what does he always say whenever he has a question? That's a terrible question. Why don't you ever just thank me? Oh, in other words, like just another one of your cabinet members.
All right, well, Stewart wasn't the only left-leaning media figure to call out ABC. Mehdi Hassan posted this after the suspension, said snowflakes, pretend free speech warriors, getting journalists suspended and calling for their firing, hypocrites. All right, well, Stewart makes some interesting points. First, the $15 million. ABC's decision to fire Moran comes months after the network reached a $15 million settlement with Trump, stemming from a lawsuit that Trump launched over George Stephanopoulos, stating that Trump was found civilly liable for raping E. Jean Carroll, which was an inaccurate assertion. But Stewart also makes a good point about Moran's character. So let's look at this clip from an interview that Moran did with Donald Trump back in April. So during this interview, Moran hit Trump hard with the facts regarding Kilmar, Abrego Garcia, and his tattoos, and Trump attacked him just for asking the question.
He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry. But you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir. I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted.
Yeah, it was photoshopped. Like, okay, so anyway, like many other news anchors who we have seen be let go due to their political stances from major networks, Moran has since made the jump over to Substack. He will continue his reporting over there. And yeah, so we lost one. That interview clip with Moran and Trump, that went viral because it was so ridiculous. And Moran, I gave him a lot of credit at the time for, just constantly correcting Trump, trying to move on, and then Trump correcting him back, which only made Trump look more and more just like a little. I'm trying to find a nice word for what I'm trying to say, but just like he has no idea what's going on. So I don't know if there is a nice word for what I'm trying to say.
Vile? Does that
yeah.
work?
So Michael, let's get to you. I know you have a lot of thoughts on whether or not this was a justified firing on behalf of ABC, because a lot of times, and like here on TYT, we're an independent network. But there is a balance that we're always trying to strike, right? You have to give people the facts. You want people to have all the necessary pertinent information whenever you're presenting a story, and then you commentate on it, right? We do that here at TYT, but the things are a little bit different at some of these bigger, major corporate media outlets. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, I don't like how the network handled that settlement with George Stephanopoulos, the Stephanopoulos issue. I don't like even the way they reacted to the Terry Moran thing, coming out and saying, well, he was at the end of his contract. I mean, stand by what you are doing if you're going to do what you are doing, right? Don't just say, oh, well, he's at the end of his contract, so it doesn't really matter. We're just not going to renew it. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But if you're going to make a statement about the objectivity, about the truth of your journalism, and about the code that you have to live by to be at ABC. But again, Terry Moran is not this rogue journalist, and this is the 8th time he's done something, and finally this was a straw that broke the camel's back. He's a solid reporter. He is somebody who, like you said, Yaz, when he interviewed President Trump, did a very good job in pushing back on him in that interview. It is an opportunity that a lot of people have dropped. People have gone in there, in the office itself, when you do an interview in the Oval Office, it is just by definition very, very imposing. I thought he did a great job. I would have just made a statement about what he said. I would not have fired him. I would have maybe, like I said earlier, reassigned him for a while until the thing blew over a little bit. But part of what these networks try and strive for, and fail a lot, is to be totally objective. And then again, when Levitt or whoever it was that was talking about Fox, Jon Stewart, I think, talking about Fox, I don't think comparing ABC and Fox is necessarily fair. ABC's mission is different than Fox's mission, and I get why it's easy to go there. It's low-hanging fruit, and sometimes it's worth taking the low-hanging fruit. But I do think that there's something different that ABC is trying to establish. The way ABC has handled themselves with both Stephanopoulos and now with Moran, I just think has been very, very sloppy at best.
Yeah, I'm going to say something at the end where make you think about, wait, could ABC have been right? But first, let me tell you all the ways they're wrong, okay? But before I even get to that, JD Vance's.
Sorry. Can I? Yeah, that's. JD Vance. You're going to talk about it. To say that Terry Moran, are you going to say makes the rules? Is that what you're going to say, Jim?
No, the different one.
Okay, Terry Moran makes the rules that normal Americans don't have to follow, but well-connected people don't. Can you think of any administration in American political history that doesn't protect the well-connected and make them not have any rules to follow? It's just absurd. I don't know what happened to JD Vance where he just buys into this or he projects in that way. But sorry to interrupt him, but yeah, that Terry Moran makes the rules, huh?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction to the second half of that line.
Yeah.
Well-connected people, okay, let's break that down. There are 13 billionaires in Trump's administration. But JD Vance himself, I'll tell you why he's doing it, because he's a giant liar and hypocrite. You know who's a well-connected person? JD Vance. He was polling in the single digits in the Ohio Senate race until the guy he's connected to, Peter Thiel, gave him $10 million for that race, and that's why he won that race. JD Vance would not have been in any of our lives if he wasn't well-connected to a Silicon Valley funder like Peter Thiel. I mean, that is the height of irony to say that line. Okay, now back to the other hypocrisies that they have. So the guys who were like, freedom of speech, oh my God, broth. Okay, that's a line from Braveheart. Anyway, he's free Scotland, not relevant. So, Mr. Freedom of Speech, Trump, Vance, all MAGA, all those guys are like, you said something mean about Donald Trump. Guys, can you get over it, right? You know how many right-wingers have said mean things about me? You know how many left-wingers have said mean things about me? You know how many establishment media has said mean things about me? If I had them all fired, there'd be almost no one left in media. Okay, grow up, so what? And the reality is, of course, they caught feelings because of that interview. And not because Terry Moran did anything super aggressive, that the letters MS and the number 13 were photoshopped in the picture that Trump showed. So Moran's trying desperately to get past it, but he needs to do a fact check. They were photoshopped, but let me move on. And he's like, no, I'm not gonna let you move on. I'm gonna keep saying dumb things. It was photoshopped, you moron. He's trying to help you by moving on, right? Terry Moran hurt my feelings. Cancel him. I want him canceled. Oh, what happened, guys? I thought you were against cancel culture. So the hypocrisy of the right wing on this is even larger, okay? So now, last thing to make you think a little bit. If Terry Moran had, or any journalist had tweeted out, Barack Obama is a world-class hater, and is picking person in his administration, and Valerie Jarrett, filled with hate, etc. Would they have been fired? And the answer is probably. I mean, that's my sense of it.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I would agree. I mean, we don't know, but I would agree. Like in the hypothetical, I'm sure that would have been the case because there's a hypersensitivity to that as well. So yeah, I would agree.
So my point there is not, okay, they should be fired for saying it about Obama, but not about Trump. My point is have consistent rules. And I believe that the reporters hiding their opinions doesn't really help. I think that if we know their opinions, but then they try really hard to be objective in the context of their job, I think that is more authentic, more real, more honest than hiding your opinions and pretending that you have none when we all know you do. So
you do, but Cenk, don't you think that like if you were a news organization and like ABC News and you said to listen to all your reporters, your correspondents, your anchors, hey, you can tweet your stories, you can tweet teases to your stories, you can tweet that you're a Red Sox fan, but there's no opinion and don't share opinions about anything else that's happening on things that you cover. Do you think that's appropriate?
Well, look, we had that situation here. So our standard was when we had a great reporting team, Jonathan Larson, Ken Klippenstein, a lot of great reporters went through here. And our standard was you could just have any opinion you like. Ken tweeted hilarious things all the time, he very strongly opinionated, etc. But when you're writing your story, you have to be objective. I'm not interested in your opinions in the middle of their investigative reporting piece, and we cared a lot about being objective in our reporting, but we didn't hide the fact that we had opinions otherwise. So that's how I.
But everybody has opinions, like you said, and I'm just saying that the Turks and ABC News, for several reasons, are different.
Can I tell you one other amazing thing? Actually, kind of burying this really interesting fact here. So I ran into a former ABC reporter just like 2 days ago. No, yesterday, literally yesterday. And we were talking, and they said that ABC told them that while they were there, that they were not even allowed to go on dating apps. So now that's
weird. Yeah.
That's amazing. And that person was young when they were there, and they're like, what do you want me to do? That's how people meet each other these days, right? Yeah. It's like saying don't go to a bar. Like it's crazy, right? But that cuts in both directions because I think ABC's way too stringent on these rules. On the other hand, apparently they're really stringent on the rules, so maybe the Terry Moran firing is not as out of place as we thought.
I don't know, like going back to what you guys were talking about earlier, I like not to use myself as an example for this, but for me, especially whenever I was doing my podcast, I would always say, this is the story. You'll know how I feel about it but my feelings about it aren't the whole story, right? And again, even whenever I'm presenting here, and this isn't me, this is how we just do things here at TYT. We give you the facts first, right? We say, okay, here it is, here's the story, and then we'll discuss it. And a lot of times we don't agree with each other whenever we're in those discussions, but that comes out, and that's what people tune in for, because you want to hear those different perspectives. And it kind of goes back to one of our commenters who was talking about the different styles of the different presenters and things like that. I do think we have a good diverse team here, but there's a reason for that. It's not just it's by design largely. I assume Cenk, you can confirm that for me. But you want to have different perspectives and different people with different ways of conveying information to people, because somebody's going to resonate with one presenter and somebody's going to resonate with somebody else. But as long as you start from that baseline of fact, that's I think that's I wouldn't feel comfortable if that wasn't what we were doing here.
100%. So never play with the facts, and that is very much true in the news stories that we present to you guys. Not just the written stuff that Jonathan, Ken, and others did here, but also in what we do. First, we give you the facts, and the facts are non-negotiable. And a lot of times, people on our own side have gotten very mad at us because we didn't change the facts. Sorry, even if it's inconvenient, we're gonna stick with what is true. That is the base. Then you begin the conversation about those facts. And then, is it a good thing to have diversity of thought? I mean, I would say, of course. And that is why we have a wide range here at TYT. And again, some people don't like that and say, no, it should be a really narrow range, my range, right? But we don't do that. We keep the range large enough that you guys can see what's right for you. Because we're all different human beings. Once you get the facts and you hear the different sides, then you make up your own mind. And I think that's the way it should be.
And if there weren't different sides, you wouldn't be able to say you're 100% wrong.
Yeah, and that's fun to say.
Yeah, of course. Also, Terry Moran, probably not 100% wrong here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, I mean, we didn't comment on it.
Bottom line.
Right. The comment itself was 100% correct, right? And that's the other thing. I believe his comment was objective.
Right, one man's objectivity.
Right, I'm kind of kidding about that. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.